They came with flags, with fury, with enough fire in the stands to light up all of Tyneside and still have some left for the river. Newcastle fans were up for this before the players even touched the pitch. Not up for it in the "we're happy to be here" way. Up for it like a club that genuinely believed it could knock a European giant sideways. And for a while, they weren't wrong. For the first 20 minutes, Barcelona were stuck in the teeth of the storm, wind-whipped and rattled. St. James Park did what St. James Park does. It swallowed the game whole and chewed through the first half like it had something personal against quiet football. Every Newcastle press was thunderclapped. Every run by Elanga, every hack from Tonali, every dart from Gordon, all of it arrived like a threat. There was a moment early on where Garcia took just a half-second too long on the ball, and you could practically feel the entire stadium lean forward like a hungry animal. That wasn't tension. That was bloodlust. And let's be clear, the hosts should have scored. Maybe twice. Harvey Barnes missed 2 chances he will not want to see again. One of them came off a dazzling Elanga break down the right, fizzed low and perfect into the box. And Barnes, with the whole of the Geordie Knight in front of him, watched Joan Garcia sprawl out like a stretch of destiny and slam the door shut with his foot. There's no justice in football, but there is irony. Because for all of Newcastle's snarling intensity, all of their hunger and bravery and beautifully naive aggression, the goals came from the other side. Of course they did. Football is a vampire. It feeds off pain. And who else could deliver it but Marcus Rashford? England's once-boy wonder, now fully grown enigma, came back to his home country and promptly set the place on fire. The kind of poetic vengeance you couldn't script because it'd be too unbelievable for Netflix. On loan from Manchester United. Booed on the touchline. And then, with the kind of casual cruelty only talent can wield, he broke Newcastle open. The first goal. Oh, the first. Jules Koundé, bless him, was quietly putting together one of those performances people forget to talk about because it's just competence. It was his cross, floated in like a sigh, kissed with the side of his weak foot, that found Rashford rising like it was 2019 again. But it wasn't the leap. It was the finish. Not a bullet, not a glance, just violence, precision, and clarity, like a message. Header into the far bottom corner. Pope dove, and he may as well have dove into the sea. The second, that was art. Or maybe it was revenge. He took the ball in the channel, wide and shallow, not a promising spot. One feint. One shimmy. And then he released it. A thunderbolt, arcsing, wicked, pure, that clipped the underside of the bar like it was trying to rip time open. Pope again leapt. Pope again was irrelevant. 2-0. Rashford in Newcastle. A sentence soaked in drama and historical baggage. And then finally, silence. A silence more deafening than the noise that preceded it. Newcastle looked stunned. Not just at the goals, but at how quickly they'd become a story of what could have been. Trippier had given everything down the right. Joe Linton, before his exit, had fought with the weight of a man trying to drag the tide. Tonali ran himself hollow. But there's only so much soul you can pour into a game before it starts dripping away. And still, they had that flicker. Anthony Gordon, because of course it was Gordon, snuck one back in the dying moments. A cutback from Murphy, one of the most understated technicians on that pitch, turned into a lifeline. Gordon slid in, slotted it in off the far post. He didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. The stadium exploded for him. What followed was mayhem. 7 minutes added. Cramp setting in like doubt. Flick frantically gesturing from the sideline. Howe pacing like a man locked out of his own house. It was all there. The desperation, the chaos, the smell of something about to happen. But Barcelona didn't flinch. That's the real story here. Not just Rashford's resurrection, or the way the stadium gasped when Garcia made save after save, like he was rewriting the job description of a goalkeeper. It's the composure, the adultness, the calm hands of De Jong and Pedri, massaging the game into submission. Because when Barcelona needed time, they found it in those two. Pedri, always sideways, glancing like a chess grandmaster, killing the pace with a touch. De Jong, bursting forward when things got stale, sitting deep when things got scary. They didn't dominate, they dictated. Garcia deserves a paragraph of his own, and probably a statue outside the Camp Nou while we're at it. Barcelona keepers of the past have been, well, adventurous. Garcia is a fortress, a librarian with reflexes, Every time the ball broke for Newcastle, and it did many times, he was there. Unflinching. Clean. Quietly immense. Flick has seen what chaos can do to his teams. He's managed in firestorms before. But this was clarity. This was Barcelona growing a spine. You don't come to St. James Park and survive without one. And yet it's Rashford who lingers in the mind. Not because he was perfect. He wasn't. The first half saw him cough up possession like he had an allergy to control. He looked off the rhythm, out of sync. But this is the eternal paradox of Rashford. He doesn't need 90 minutes to convince you. He needs two. 2 moments. 2 touches. 2 chances. And in this match, he didn't just score goals. He punctured a dream. You could feel it in the way Newcastle moved after the second. Slower, heavier. The belief leaking out like air from a balloon. But that's what European football does. It tests not just your legs, but your faith. And tonight, Barcelona had just enough of both. And then came the scramble. 7 minutes of added time is a lifetime when you're clinging to a lead, and an even longer one when you're doing it in front of a collapsing cathedral of belief. The stadium had reawakened, roared back to life with Gordon's goal, not just because it mattered, but because it might. And Newcastle, bless their beautiful recklessness, believed again. They hurled long balls, wide balls, hopeful balls. They tried channel runs and floated crosses. Dan Burn was up top, elbowing physics out of the way. Livramento threw himself forward like he'd never played fullback in his life. Pope, like a polite assassin, lingered around the halfway line just in case. But Barcelona didn't blink. There's a strange kind of poetry in watching a team defend with calm, especially when that calm is being actively disrespected by a 6'6" striker named Woltemade, who's basically a sentient boulder. Every second was a test of nerve, and for every bounce that threatened to fall kindly, Garcia's gloves were there. I still don't understand how he made some of those saves look boring. There was one, I think in the 95th, where Willock hit a low, skipping shot through a mess of legs. It was venomous. The kind of shot that screams deflection. And Garcia caught it like someone handing him a birthday card, didn't even smile. And maybe that's what Barcelona were missing all this time. A keeper who doesn't try to be a star. Just a keeper. One who closes doors and opens nothing. Look, this wasn't some glorious domination. Barcelona weren't strutting. This was trench warfare with prettier kit. This was a team that got sucker punched early, found its breath, then sent in the hired gun and said, go fix it. Rashford was the highlight, the camera magnet, but he was also the release valve. Without his goals, this would have been a conversation about fragility, about missed chances, about Barcelona not being ready for this level of aggression. But instead, it's a conversation about a man who's had every question thrown at him and answered 2 of them with thunder. You can't fake those goals. You can't rehearse them. The header was technique, yes. But it was timing. Power. Knowing exactly when to drop off the shoulder and attack space like it was owed to him. And the second? That's street football on a cathedral stage. A hit that speaks a language very few players still speak. One that starts with, give me the ball, and ends with, watch this. But let's not pretend Barcelona were a one-man show. Pedri and De Jong were sculptors in the middle of a construction site. When the game needed touch, they gave it feather. When it needed a tackle, they gave it teeth. Watching Pedri dance past Tonali is like watching a hummingbird avoid traffic. It shouldn't be possible. But he does it with joy, with spiteful joy. And De Jong, my God. He plays football like he's trying to solve a puzzle in a burning building. Calm, sure, but urgent. Always moving, always finding the angle others don't know exist. When he picks the ball up just inside his own half and carries it like it's made of silk, you feel the crowd's confusion. Like, how is he still running? This is where Flick's fingerprints were all over the game. Not in some dazzling tactical revelation, but in the control. The subtle shift after the second goal, the intelligent fouls, the substitutions that weren't about legs, but about slowing the blood. Dani Olmo comes on, doesn't beat a man once, but links 3 passes that kill a counter. Casado commits a cynical foul, but it's the foul that ends a Newcastle sprint and lets everyone breathe again. There's cynicism here, yes, but it's grown-up cynicism, the kind that wins tournaments. And Newcastle? They'll feel like they should have gotten more. Maybe they should have. Gordon was electric. Alanga at times looked like he was auditioning for a new career as a professional chaos agent. Even Joelinton, before coming off, had that play until I burst energy that's impossible not to admire. But they lacked one thing Barcelona had, the moment. Not the build-up. Not the tactical plan. The moment. The flash. The game-breaker. Rashford was that. Garcia too, in his own way. You leave a match like this and you talk about who changed it. Not who passed it around prettily or made the right defensive read, who broke it. And in a weird, wonderful way, it feels right that it was Rashford. Because football is romantic, even when it's cruel. Especially when it's cruel. It will always find a way to turn your own stories against you. Newcastle, full of belief and running, were undone by an Englishman they didn't have to face in the league. On loan. A misfit. A project. Barcelona will move forward now with something more valuable than points. Belief. They've had talent before, but now they've got proof. Proof that they can go to a place like this, weather the hellstorm, and walk away not lucky, not alive, but victorious. And maybe this was their warning shot. Because this wasn't Barcelona at full power. This was Barcelona in survival mode. And they still won. As for Newcastle, the journey continues. This wasn't humiliation. This was heartbreak with honor. And if there's anything to be sure of, it's that teams will not enjoy coming here in the months ahead. But tonight belonged to the visitors. To Garcia, gloves like prophecies. To Pedri and De Jong, weaving serenity from smoke. And to Marcus Rashford, who came home, stepped onto the stage, and reminded the country what they'd forgotten. This has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.